As we're approaching the bottom of the hour, I want to get everyone up to speed. We are covering a mass casualty incident overnight in New Orleans. 10 people, at least, were killed when a truck drove into a crowd of New Year's Eve revelers in the city's world-famous French Quarter. The incident began around 3:15 a.m. Central Time. A man driving a pickup truck drove through some barricades at a high rate of speed, hitting multiple people. At least 35 were transported to hospitals with injuries. The suspect then got out of his vehicle and shot 2 officers. They were hit and are in stable condition. Law enforcement sources are now telling CBS that the suspect is deceased. His identity has not been released right now. We are also told that possible explosives were found nearby, and it's unclear if they are related to the attack. The FBI will be taking over the investigation. Now we want to play you some tape of someone who was in a hotel near the scene of the attack, heard the sound as the incident was unfolding. Kellen Piku spoke with our New Orleans affiliate, WWL.
At about 3:15 this morning, it sounded like a very loud crash. And I heard a lot of ruckus. I didn't realize what was going on until, and it took me a little while to go to sleep. But it felt like the building was shaking. And that's from a block away. I'm on the 400 block of Dauphine, and this happened on the 300 block of Bourbon Street.
Kellen, did you see anyone at this point? What did you see after hearing this boom? Just walk us through what happened next.
I didn't really see anything. I was unaware what was going on, but it sounded like, it sounded like a very loud crash.
Is the hotel? Go ahead, sorry.
And I tried to go outside, and it was like, but I didn't, it's just a lot of people running around, so I just went back in the hotel. I came back up to my room. And then eventually I was able to go off to sleep, and then I woke up to my phone going off, people calling me, asking me if I was okay because they knew I was here.
Let's go back to Katie Weiss, who is near the scene in New Orleans. Katie, just thinking about who would have been out there at 3 in the morning, I have to imagine it's a lot of tourists who were out early this morning when this happened.
Absolutely. There were a lot of tourists and locals alike. People come to New Orleans specifically for a big holiday like New Year's. Growing up on the Gulf Coast, this was a place where I would come with my friends for New Year's Eve many holidays in a row. And so for a lot of people, this 3 a.m., that was not a late night. That was a normal peak hour time to be out and about on New Year's Eve in downtown New Orleans on Bourbon Street, an iconic place for people to come out and have a good time and ring in the new year. So it certainly came as the last thing anyone had on their minds at that moment. I spoke with some witnesses who saw this vehicle, this truck, plow through this crowd, and then heard gunshots, multiple gunshots. One woman described to me that it sounded like some kind of automatic style weapon. Of course, that's something we're continuing to try to confirm as to specifically what kind of weapon was used. But she said the gunshots sounded so rapid and quick that it sounded like it may have been some kind of automatic weapon of sorts that was used. But so many people just in total shock, not able to really piece together what was going on, just simply looking at the sheer terror of people on the ground in critical condition, blood everywhere. People were very scared this morning.
Katie, can you talk about the law enforcement presence right there on the scene right now? Because we know the FBI is there, as well as New Orleans police, and we're told other departments have been called in as well. What are you seeing on the ground?
Well, this morning when I was there, which is just a few blocks away from where I'm standing currently, the scene where this incident took place, there were, hundreds of law enforcement officers from multiple different agencies. I could tell, state troopers, sheriffs, all sorts of different law enforcement folks coming together to try to, respond to this appropriately. crime scene tape was getting put up as I was leaving the area. And then now at this hour, I mean, all morning downtown, I've been hearing sirens. I've been seeing helicopters above me. There's certainly a large presence. And as we've mentioned earlier in this show, today's a big day. It's a big game day for New Orleans. A lot of people are here for this day. People are coming here even just to tailgate outside, right, you know, in the streets below me on this rooftop that I'm at. And, you know, people are excited for what's to come. But New Orleans police, FBI have made it very clear. If you're here to have a good time, that's great. But stay away from Bourbon Street right now. They need to do their thing. They're working on their investigation. And
at the same time, they'll need to protect the football game and other events that are still happening later today. Katie, thank you so much. We're going to check back in with you in a bit. But first, I want to go to CBS News reporter Nicole Skanga on the phone. I know you've been talking, Nicole, with your sources. What are you learning right now?
Yeah, and Michael, there was a bit of a change of posture or perhaps just a clarification here. The FBI putting out a statement moments ago indicating, you know, first and foremost that the subject, after engaging with local law enforcement, is now deceased. Of course, CBS News already reported that. We do know that this individual had a firearm on their person as they were driving the vehicle, and right now local law enforcement, in conjunction with the FBI, are searching that vehicle. They're looking for any additional weapons, any other improvised explosive devices. We know that law enforcement has found additional improvised explosive devices in the area. Still unclear if those two are connected, but of course, law enforcement scouring the ground now, not only looking over the crime scene, but trying to determine if there were any other weapons or incendiary devices placed nearby as part of this, you know, large mass casualty attack. That is the work that is underway now. We also learned from the FBI that they are investigating this as an act of terrorism. You know, earlier we did hear from law enforcement who initially had suggested that they had ruled that out as a possibility. Of course, still very early on in this investigation. Very clear now that law enforcement and FBI, which is acting as the lead, is in fact looking into this incident as an act of terrorism, looking at whether there were any political, religious, ideological goals associated with this attack. You know, no doubt this perpetrator intended, you know, carnage, as we heard from law enforcement earlier today, but still very early in what will be a weeks and months long investigation for the FBI and other law enforcement on the ground.
And Nicole, when we talk about terrorism, you and I might use the word differently than federal law enforcement. When they say it's being investigated as a possible act of terrorism, what do they mean by that term?
Yeah, they are looking for any sort of ideological nexus that would connect this to, you know, a larger event that was intended to really create panic among society. Any political or religious or ideological, you know, phenomenon that were connected to the motivations of the suspect here. And there are specific, you know, statutes, terrorism statutes, both on the state level and the federal level, that, of course, you know, will be involved. You know, if and when there are charges related to an incident like this, of course, now we know that the suspect is dead. Some of that becomes less relevant, but certainly still relevant when it comes to piecing together why this suspect did what they did, whether or not they acted alone, if this was, you know, an inspired attack or a directed attack. And it's still very early in this investigation. One thing that federal law enforcement has already indicated to me they're, of course, concerned about, it is a constant concern, is about this event, you know, creating incentive for others, for copycat attacks down the road. And that was a big concern coming out of the Christmas market attack in Germany, that we would see, you know, additional vehicle ramming incidents after that atrocious attack. Now here we are. We don't know whether or not this individual was inspired by the events that took place in Germany. But this is a concern moving forward for law enforcement, and really has been historically.
All right, Nicole Skanga, thank you for your reporting. Let's turn now to Scott McFarland in Washington. I know you've been talking with a lot of your sources. What can you tell us, Scott?
It's worth reinforcing something quite important Nicole said there. The FBI is the lead investigative agency for terrorism, and they always say unequivocally it is their top priority, preventing terrorism in the United States. And they have this checklist, this list of definitions that they use to communicate how they investigate terrorism, but also to make clear what they think the threats are. And they have this acronym called DVE, Domestic Violent Extremism, a primary concern of the FBI, who said in so many different ways over so many months that the lone wolf terror threat is an emerging post-9/11 terror threat they are still grappling with, still trying to minimize. That may inform their investigation in New Orleans, if a possible lone actor, DVE, is ultimately responsible. But I want to bring your attention to a City of New Orleans Public Works memo obtained by CBS News, authored actually 8 years ago in 2017, in which they detailed their concern of just this type of targeting of Bourbon Street. In the memo, they talked about considering vehicle bans, if not tighter restrictions in that entire area, because in so many words, they say the French Quarter is often densely packed with pedestrians and represents an area where a mass casualty incident could occur. The memo continues. Since Bourbon Street is one of the focal points in the French Quarter for pedestrians, it's recommended that the city consider closing Bourbon Street to vehicular traffic, with the exception of emergency vehicles at designated times, as risk mitigation measures. What's more, according to the memo reviewed by CBS News, the city was grappling with this because, as is often the case, many of the businesses and homeowners nearby still want to have vehicular traffic to keep the businesses vibrant and to keep the homes accessible. This is one of those dynamics that's going to inform, Michael, so many security plans moving forward in so many U.S. cities. As you see this cascading number of vehicular attacks and the fear of copycats, not only, Michael, will this inform things like security for major events like tonight's Sugar Bowl in New Orleans, next month's Super Bowl in New Orleans, but all of these large pedestrian gatherings in major U.S. cities and communities.
Well, you talk about Bourbon Street and protecting those streets. What we know from police right now is they say that they did have barricades in place. This driver apparently drove around or through barricades at a high rate of speed. But I'm sure there's going to be a lot of discussions in the coming days and weeks about whether those barricades should be extended, whether a perimeter around these areas. You mentioned the Sugar Bowl. You mentioned the Super Bowl. How is security going to change at those events based on what happened today? It's going to be a conversation that we'll continue to have.
And here in Washington, D.C., Michael, obviously we're coming up on a whole series of huge pedestrian gatherings. The inauguration is January 20th. We've seen in past inaugurations, there's hundreds of thousands of people, many of whom are making their way to the scene on open streets, or streets where they've found a place to put their car. This is a component of security planning. It may be an increased component of security planning, but one law enforcement official told me recently, we're going to have all those fences around the Capitol on January 6th. It's a Homeland Security event. The Super Bowl will have bag checks and fencing, but fencing only does so much. It really is the human intelligence on the ground, the analysis of intelligence that is a more comprehensive way of stopping these types of threats. As we saw overnight in New Orleans, barriers and walls and fences only do so much.
All right, Scott McFarland, thank you so much. Earlier, we spoke to witnesses Jim and Nicole Maurer. They're from Des Moines. They were visiting family in New Orleans, and they were on Bourbon Street when the incident happened. Let's take a listen.
It was traveling at a very high rate of speed, and so we were in the middle of the road and managed to run off the road onto the sidewalk and into the doorway of a building for cover. We did hear gunfire, saw police running that direction. We stayed in the alcove until the gunfire stopped, came out into the street, and came across several people who had been hit. Wanted to see what we could do to help and administer any first aid. The people we came across were unfortunately deceased.
We've been talking this morning with Mary Ellen O'Toole, a former senior FBI criminal profiler. She is now director of the Forensic Science Program at George Mason University in Virginia. Mary Ellen, good morning. I want to ask about, look, we have a lot of unanswered questions here, but when we know what we know about this incident, what can you tell about the suspect and the nature of the attack just based on what we know so far?
Sure. Thank you, and good morning to everyone. based on just the behavior that we've seen thus far, this was a very well planned out and unfortunately a very successful attack. And when you see that, that goes to the motivation of the offender. So while it's the typical motivations in a crime are money, revenge, in a case like this person's motivations had to include that they wanted to kill as many people as they possibly could, which is hard for a lot of the general public to understand because this offender didn't even know these people. These people did nothing to him whatsoever, and yet he wanted to kill them and to hurt as many people as possible. But we know that these kind of offenders exist in our society and throughout the world, and that tells us a lot about how he prepared mentally for this crime. And that's what FBI will be looking for, is how did he prepare to carry off such a successful event like this, a successful crime. And I think one of the things that he might have done is to consider other venues besides New Orleans, not unlike the shooter in Las Vegas, when he decided to use Las Vegas as his location. He had considered other sites, including Chicago and a couple of other places. So I think that the FBI will be looking at that just in terms of establishing how well planned out this event was. This was not a spontaneous, this guy just snapped kind of event.
Mary Ellen, how do FBI agents determine whether or not this is a lone attacker? Are they looking not just at people who may have known about the attack, but people that in this person's past who may have shared details or hinted at? We've seen in previous incidents somebody has sort of told a neighbor, told a friend, hinting that they may do something like this. Is that all part of the scope of the investigation?
Yes, and that takes a while. That's just not something that they can opine about today. They won't be able to do that. They'll have to go and look at this person's background, talk to people that knew him, talk to neighbors, families, coworkers, anybody that might have information. And then, of course, they have to go and look at his online presence. Who's he talking to online, or maybe somewhere around the world? So they probably won't be able to offer an opinion on that for for a number of hours, if not longer. It takes a while to make that determination, and they don't want to get that wrong, because if there are other people that help this individual carry out this plot, those people then have to rise to the level of being a target in the investigation and be themselves investigated. So they're going to be very careful in terms of discerning between, did he act alone and then leak his plans to other people? That's called leakage, talking about it ahead of time. And or did he actually have people that supported and helped him to carry out this plot? So it's two different tracks of investigation.
All right, Mary Ellen O'Toole, thank you for sharing your perspective.